They wait. That's the tragedy. They wait for a sign. They wait for approval. They wait for someone to hand them the key to their own destiny as if greatness were a gate guarded by some invisible committee. But here's the truth. They don't teach you in school, in offices, in quiet conversations at dinner tables. The gate was never locked. It was never even closed. And the only person who ever stood in front of it was you. Why do most people fail? Not because they lack talent, not because they lack ideas, but because they have been conditioned, trained, to believe that greatness must be granted, that ambition must be justified, that the fire inside must first be stamped with someone else's seal before it's safe to burn. They wait for a degree to feel intelligent. They wait for applause to feel worthy. They wait for some mentor, some boss, some family member, some lover to look them in the eyes and whisper, "You're allowed now." But the world doesn't hand out permission slips for greatness. No divine hand parts the clouds and says, "You're chosen." That's fantasy. That's the myth we've swallowed whole, the lie that tells us success is a matter of luck, timing, or birthright. But every empire was once a sketch on a napkin. Every legend was once dismissed as insane. Every inventor was once a child playing with the impossible. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times, and no one gave him permission to keep going. They mocked him, laughed at him, called him a fool, but he didn't wait for the world to tell him it was okay to believe. He lit up the darkness anyway, because that's what the great ones do. They move without permission. They speak even when their voice trembles. They step forward before they know how to run. And they take the hits, the rejections, the silence, and build with them. Because to become extraordinary, you must first stop asking the ordinary for approval. Let that sink in. If you're asking the average for permission to become exceptional, you'll die waiting. You'll die wondering what could have been if only you were braver. Sooner. But here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. No one is coming to crown you. No one is coming to save you. No one will walk into your room at midnight and say, "You're ready now." That voice, that call, it has to come from inside. And if it doesn't, you'll keep waiting. Another year, another excuse, another chapter closed without ever being written. You see, belief isn't something you find, it's something you build. Stone by stone, thought by thought, action by action. Belief isn't inherited, it's forged in the heat of doubt. You must take the first step before the bridge appears. You must plant the seed before the soil says yes. And most people can't stomach that level of faith. Most people have been programmed to need confirmation before motion, but confirmation is the byproduct, not the prerequisite. It comes after you move, not before. Think about Henry Ford. When he proposed the idea of a car for every man, the world laughed. Horse carriages work just fine. People told him, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." But Ford didn't ask for validation. He asked for vision. And he paid the price in ridicule until the world caught up. So why do most people fail? Because they wait for the crowd to cheer before they step on stage. They wait for the market to be safe before they invest in their own ideas. They wait for everyone to agree, forgetting that every great change began with a minority of one. That's the root of failure. Waiting for permission to be different. Waiting for the world to go first. But the world never goes first. The world responds to those bold enough to lead it. So you must lead. Even if your knees shake. Even if your voice breaks. Even if your parents, your friends, your boss, your followers don't get it yet. That's not your burden to carry. Your job is not to be understood. Your job is to understand yourself deeply and fully, and to act from that understanding. Because clarity doesn't come from waiting. It comes from walking. It comes from choosing a direction and committing to it with every fiber of your being, not because the path is guaranteed, but because you are. Look at Walt Disney, fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination, bankrupted more than once, ridiculed, rejected, and yet he sketched a mouse that would become an empire. Because Disney didn't need the world's permission to dream. He gave himself the license to imagine. And that internal permission is where greatness begins. So if you're waiting for someone to tap your shoulder and say, You're allowed now. This is it. This is the tap. This is the voice. And this is the moment you stop asking for permission and start demanding purpose. Because there is no power in hesitation. There is only power in movement. And those who hesitate stagnate. But those who move, they evolve. They transcend. They awaken. So rise. Not because someone said you could, but because you decided to. Because the moment you stop waiting is the moment the world starts watching. And if you stay rooted in belief even when the storm comes, you'll bend. But you won't break. You'll fall, but you'll rise again. Stronger, sharper, hungrier. Because now you're fueled not by approval, but by alignment. Alignment with your own vision. Your own standard. Your own internal fire. And when you live from that place where purpose replaces permission, the world can't ignore you. It won't always praise you. It won't always like you. But it will feel you. And that is the beginning of influence. Not popularity, not fame. But influence, the ability to shape the world by shaping yourself first. You become a mirror, reflecting courage, not conformity. And the moment you do, you'll realize the crowd was never your master. The critics were never your judge. And the permission you've been waiting for? It was yours all along. The chains that bind most people aren't made of steel. They're made of shoulds. You should be patient. You should wait your turn. You should stay quiet, stay humble, stay small. But those chains, they were forged by the fearful, passed down from generation to generation, and now they dress them up as wisdom. But let's speak truth to power. It's not wisdom that tells you to wait until you're ready. It's fear. And fear wears many masks. It wears the mask of reason. It wears the mask of responsibility. It wears the mask of playing it safe. But underneath those masks is the trembling voice of a person who once dared and was struck down. And now they tell you, don't fly too high, don't dream too big, don't stir the waters. Because they drowned. And they never learned how to swim through the storm. But here's what they don't know. Storms don't come to destroy you, they come to awaken you, to show you who you are when the applause is gone, when the light dims, when all that's left is your will. You want to know the difference between the average and the great? It's not education. It's not background. It's not luck. It's permission. The greats give it to themselves. The average wait for someone else to give it. That's it. That's the whole game. When Lincoln walked barefoot through the backwoods of Kentucky, no one looked at him and said, "There goes a president." They said, "There goes a poor farm boy." But greatness isn't about the eyes that watch you. It's about the vision you carry inside when no one's watching. Lincoln read by candlelight while the world slept. He fed his hunger with books, not bread. He sharpened his mind in solitude. Why? Because he gave himself permission to believe that his circumstance wasn't his sentence, that his beginning didn't determine his becoming. Most people fail because they let the world define their ceiling. And the world is stingy with ceilings. It loves to tell you where you stop, how far you're allowed to go, what you're qualified to do. But the soul knows no such boundaries. The soul expands as far as you let it, as far as you push it. And the moment you stop letting the world draw your map is the moment you start becoming limitless. But here's the catch. With self-permission comes self-responsibility. And that's what most people fear the most. Because once you stop blaming the world, the parents, the economy, the system, once you say, "It's on me now," you can no longer hide. Now you must build. Now you must walk the talk. Now you must risk not just rejection, but irrelevance. And that's terrifying, because we've been raised to crave approval like air. But the truth is, most people would rather be liked and broke than disliked and free. They would rather stay in the prison of comfort than be misunderstood in the pursuit of purpose. But legends choose to be misunderstood. They choose solitude over safety, growth over gossip, truth over trend, because they know that the world only understands you after you win, never before. Elon Musk was mocked when he dared to disrupt three industries at once. People said he was arrogant, crazy, reckless, until they couldn't ignore the rockets, until they couldn't ignore the cars, until they couldn't ignore the vision. But long before the world stood and clapped, he stood alone. He gave himself permission to try what others wouldn't even dare to imagine. And that's the separation. The crowd waits for proof. The greats act on belief. But belief is not a gift. It's a decision. It's a contract you sign with your future in blood, sweat, and silence. You say, I will not stop. I will not beg. I will not ask the world to understand. You say, I will build in the shadows if I must, but I will build. Because purpose doesn't always start with clarity. Sometimes it starts with rebellion, a refusal to be boxed, caged, labeled, a refusal to be what the world expects of you. And when you shed that skin, when you stop performing and start becoming, that's when the transformation begins. But understand this, the price of greatness is high. It costs your comfort. It costs your conformity. It costs your place in the herd. You will be doubted. You will be dismissed. You will be alone. But when that loneliness sets in, smile, because that is the wilderness where leaders are born. That is the crucible where your vision is purified. That is where the real ones are separated from the rest. Do not run from that place. Own it. Sit in it. Let it strip you of every lie you once believed about yourself. Let it break the illusion that the world owes you anything, because it doesn't. It never did. You owe yourself the life you came here to live, and that life does not begin with permission. It begins with conviction. So stop waiting. Start before you're ready, before it's perfect, before anyone claps. Because when you decide, the universe aligns. But only after you commit fully, ferociously, and without apology. Commitment without applause, that's where it begins. Because the truth no one wants to hear is that greatness is lonely at first. It doesn't look glamorous. It looks like showing up when no one's watching. It looks like doing the reps, writing the words, building the thing when there's no promise, no guarantee, no spotlight. It looks like silence. It feels like doubt. And it demands everything. But this is the paradox. If you can withstand the silence, if you can keep walking through that void of approval, then something begins to shift. You stop needing the world to notice. You start creating because you must. Because there's a fire in you that will consume you if you don't let it burn through the work. You become dangerous not to others, but to limitation itself. Because you've given up the need to be given anything. You've become self-generating, self-sustaining, self-responsible. And in that state, you become unstoppable. Think about it. What can they take from you if you don't need their permission? What can they threaten if your source is internal? This is what made men like Carnegie dangerous. He didn't ask for the world to tell him when he was ready to lead. He saw opportunity in steel when others only saw risk. He stepped into arenas he had no credentials for except vision, except hunger, except willingness to become what the world said he couldn't. The same goes for Oprah. Born into poverty, abused, dismissed. But she didn't wait for the media gatekeepers to give her a shot. She kicked in the door with authenticity. She built an empire not by conforming, but by transforming the very space she entered. Permission? Number? It was power. And power is never given, it's claimed. But here's what they won't teach you in any motivational seminar. Power without purpose will burn you alive. You don't rise just to rise. You rise for a reason. You rise because something inside you refuses to settle. Because you've seen the life you're capable of living, if only you stop betraying yourself. Every time you shrink, every time you doubt, every time you stay silent when your soul screams to speak, you betray the very thing you were born to protect, your potential. And you know it. That's why it hurts. That's why the guilt eats you up late at night, not because you failed someone else's dream, but because you keep abandoning your own. But the beautiful thing about pain is that it's a compass. It points you toward the places in your life where you've given your power away. It shows you where you've been living under permission instead of on purpose. So use it. Let it fuel you. Let it wake you up, because there's something sacred about a human being who finally remembers who they are. There's a fire in their eyes, a stillness in their stride, a focus that cuts through noise like a blade. They don't chase, they choose. They don't wait, they walk. They don't ask for respect. They command it through action, not words. Because when you stop negotiating with your calling, when you finally go all in, the world has no choice but to move. The waters part. The doors open. Not all at once and not always easily, but they open enough. Enough for you to squeeze through. Enough for you to earn your place. Not because someone allowed it, but because you demanded it from yourself. This is why clarity matters. Because you can't walk boldly if you're confused. You can't take the hill if you don't know which hill you're meant to take. And most people stay lost. Not because they lack the map, but because they never stopped long enough to look inside. They ask, "What should I do?" Instead of asking, "What was I born to do?" that I've been too afraid to admit, clarity begins where ego ends. When you strip away the noise, the expectations, the comparisons, what's left? What is it that you ache to create? What would you do if you knew the critics couldn't touch you? What would you build if rejection didn't paralyze you? That's the vision. And vision is fuel. Without it, discipline is drudgery. Without it, action becomes meaningless motion. But with it, every step becomes sacred. Every day becomes divine. Because you're not just working, you're becoming. And that becoming, that daily act of rising again in the face of invisibility, rejection, hardship, that is what makes a person magnetic. The world senses it. They may not understand it, but they feel it, because it's rare. Rare to see someone who knows. Not knows the answers, but knows themselves. Knows what they're willing to bleed for. Knows what they're willing to build through storms. Knows what they're not willing to die without doing. And that kind of clarity, it's more dangerous than any weapon, because it cannot be swayed. Not by failure, not by fame, not by fear. It walks alone if it has to. It waits for no man, because it remembers something the rest of the world forgot. You don't need permission to live a life that sets your soul on fire. You only need to decide that you're done playing small, that you're done waiting for the world to clap, that you're done asking, "Am I enough?" and ready to start declaring, "I am." No more delay. No more pretending you're confused. You know. You've always known. Now you act. And when you do, when you commit fully, something ancient awakens inside you. A voice that says, "Welcome back. I've been waiting for you." The voice has been whispering to you for years, hasn't it? In the quiet spaces, in the tension before sleep, in the mirror when no one's watching, that flicker of knowing, that spark of more. Not greed, not ego, just truth. A sacred ache that says, "This is not all you were meant to be." But you've silenced it. Because it's easier to scroll, easier to wait, easier to pretend that maybe, someday, somehow, someone will notice you and then you'll start. But someday is not a day on the calendar. And permission is not a door anyone else can open. The world is not holding you back. You are. And that's the hard truth. But it's also the most liberating one. Because if it's on you, then it's within you. Every single revolution begins in silence. Every awakening begins in stillness. And right here in this moment, you are standing at the edge of a life that could either be repeated or reborn. Most will repeat. They'll choose the loop. They'll wake up, check their phone, go through the motions, smile when it's expected, nod when it's polite, and die full of dreams they never had the courage to defend. But you have another option. You can choose to be the one who moved first, the one who didn't wait for certainty, the one who didn't need 10 green lights to start driving, the one who stepped into the storm with a match in hand and said, "If no one else will light the way, I will." You don't need a bigger platform. You don't need better timing. You need brutal honesty with yourself. You need to remember who the hell you are and who you were before the world told you to play it safe. Before you were taught to trade fire for manners, to bow instead of blaze, to be liked instead of legendary. But the ones who changed the world never waited to be liked. They didn't hesitate because their voice shook. They didn't shrink when the world said, "You can't." They said, "Watch me." And if you want to live a life that demands to be remembered, that's what it's going to take. No more hoping the moment comes. No more waiting for someone to validate your vision. You are the moment. You are the permission. You are the miracle you've been praying would arrive. It's been inside you this whole time, disguised as discomfort, as restlessness, as a quiet rebellion that refused to die. That voice you keep pushing down, that's not noise. That's calling. And calling doesn't go away. It doesn't get quieter with age. It gets louder, more urgent, more painful to ignore, until one day it breaks you or it builds you. You choose. You always have. The people who fail, they choose silence. They choose delay. They choose comfort dressed as logic. But the people who rise, they choose fire, over and over again. Not because it's safe, but because it's theirs. Because they finally understood. The goal isn't to arrive safely at death. The goal is to burn completely in the direction of your truth. So stop asking if you're ready. No one is ready. No one feels qualified. No one knows how it ends. But the ones who win are the ones who begin anyway. They bleed for it. They lose sleep over it. They sacrifice for it. And slowly, day by day, they become the kind of person who didn't need a map, because they became the compass. Do you hear me? You are not waiting for life to start. Life is waiting for you to start. And if you don't, if you keep hesitating, keep stalling, keep watering yourself down so you can blend into the background, then you will wake up one day and realize you never really lived. You never really played full out. You never really touched the edges of your own power. And that will haunt you more than any failure ever could. So don't you dare let another year pass in that fog. Don't you dare give fear another ounce of your fire. If you hear this, if your heart is pounding, if your hands are shaking, that's confirmation. That's alignment. That's the truth knocking on your chest saying, now. Now is the time you rise. Now is the time you answer the call. Now is the time you stop being a secret to yourself. You are not meant to be buried in potential. You are not meant to live and die as a whisper. You were built for roar. So speak it. Live it. Stand for it. Let them laugh. Let them doubt. Let them walk away. Because the real ones, the ones who feel what you feel, they'll find you. And when they do, they won't just follow. They'll rise with you. But it all starts with this. No more asking for permission. You already have it. You always did. Now, take it and become everything they told you was too much, too intense, too ambitious, too soon, too bold. Because the truth is, that's exactly what you were born to be. And the world, it won't admit it yet, but it's been waiting for you.